Good morning. Come on, good morning. Bon dia. Thank you, thank you. I'm Carol Cohn, and actually, I got promoted since we put my name on the conference. I am Global Practice Chair of Edelman Business Plus Social Purpose. And I have been in the field of linking brands and businesses to social issues since 1982, when I had my own firm, Cohn. And I joined Edelman 2 years ago after selling my company to Omnicom. I know there's some Omnicom agencies in the room, because I felt that the strategy of linking brands authentically and with relevance and sustained over time to create engagement with citizen consumers as well as employees was becoming core business and brand strategy. So I am thrilled to be part of Edelman, now the world's largest public relations firm, and I'm thrilled to be part of, to be the global practice chair. We have about 100 people around the globe helping companies and brands to do this important strategy. I'd also like to say that we have a wonderful sister agency that we acquired in Brazil called Significa, and that Significa, as I was developing Cohn over the 80s and 90s and the early 2000s, was parallel pathing. They have a philosophy called brand attitude, and they talk about brands that need to act before they talk. So today I'm going to share with you why that is so important, and that I hope that I can make you into a believer. So let me just get a show of hands. For whom you work for, is it important that your organization has a purpose, has a reason for being beyond? I'm seeing head shake. I want to see a show of hands. Is this important to you as an employee or an owner? Show of hands. Come on, let's see. And tell me why. Somebody shout out. Why is that important to you?
It gives us a reason to wake up in the morning.
Excellent. Okay, what else? Come on, we got to get engaged here.
Want to make a difference.
Want to make a difference, okay? Somebody said to me, I want to tell my children what I do besides selling stuff. And then somebody the other day said, this is just the way we are. So purpose, which is the practice that I lead, you hear a lot of people, they use the term CSR, sustainability, cause marketing, cause branding. Don't get stuck in the word. In this totally transparent world that we're in, this is the way business must be. My colleagues on the panel are going to talk about that in their organization. Let's take a look at why now. First of all, this year we went through the 7 billionth person being born on our planet. And what's going to happen by 2050? There's going to be 9 billion people on this globe. But we have finite resources. And so we must find a way to utilize those resources for today, but tomorrow, for our children and our children's children, so they can be healthy, so they can have a vibrant career, that they can contribute to feeling as a whole person, having a family, having a community. But let's also see why now. You heard about social media yesterday and digital. Well, the major reason why this is so important, and this is a have-to-do strategy, it's no longer if, it's about the how. It's because of our totally radically transparent society that we live in. All of us, we have smartphones. We can find out about brands and businesses. What's the company behind who we're working for, who we're advocating for, who we're activating. But as well, I just made the proof about talent. We all want the best talent, and we want, especially young people, want to work for a company that inspires them. Then there's social issues all over the world of different types. I'll show you many today. Consumer expectations, we're going to talk about, especially the Brazilian consumer. And I'm going to talk about the research that we've done for 5 years at Edelman, which really has been tracking consumer attitudes and actions towards brands and companies with causes. And as well, trust. How many of you are familiar with the Edelman Trust Barometer? Have you heard of it? A few. I strongly urge you, because I know in your sales efforts and in your relationships with your customers as well as consumers, trust is something that must be there before anybody will listen to what you have to say. They will advocate or buy or work for you. We have an evolving consumer around the world. We have young people around the globe who want a job, who are graduating from college or from high school. They can't get jobs. That's a problem. But it's also a compassionate consumer, as well a vocal. We had, of course, Occupy Wall Street. We had the Arab Spring. In Brazil, we had riots against and protests against government corruption. And as well, empowered. We all have our word of mouth. We have our social media. We have our friends. And you will see that it is no longer, you can see that there are protests that happen in 2 and 3 hours via online communities such as change.org and others. You can run, but you can't hide. So having a social strategy, not social media, but social issues engagement is absolutely exciting. And I'll tell you a secret for every person in this room, that if you can get engaged in this with your clients, with your companies, with your brands and your consumers, it will change your career. I guarantee it. I put my reputation on the line. It will change your career because you will have that additional purpose to do. So push it forward. Take some of the knowledge from this presentation. Let me give you some of the new data. The Edelman Trust Barometer, which is 12 years old, 25 countries, with 25,000 elite consumers. We asked the question, what builds trust? So this year we went deeper. We asked 2 different types of attributes of trust. Operational attributes, sound leadership, consistent profits, transparency. That is what is earned today. Trust today, companies do that. But we also had a second set of attributes. Those are social issues, social performance. Treats employees well, listens to customers, engages with the environment. Look what happened when we asked around the globe about earning future trust. Future trust is earned with the social attributes at the top and the operational at the bottom. We call that, at the bottom, it's license to operate. You go into a new country, especially let's say if you're a brand and you want to move into Brazil, you want to move in India, in China, you need to earn a license to operate, especially with the government. And you'll see now with consumers. But it's the social engagement that will earn tomorrow's trust. Earn a license to lead, as Richard Edelman talks about that. Now, here's an interesting data point about Brazil and the Brazilian consumer. Of the social attributes, the number 1 is the environment, the number 2 is employee. Those are the top 2 things the Brazilian consumer wants to hear from a company and a brand to earn their future trust. Different from different countries around the globe. So let me talk a little bit about our good purpose research and what it means for you and for brands. This was conducted in 16 countries, the largest ever. It's our 5th year, online, 500 citizen consumers that responded. Now let me just make a comment from this data that there is a new type of consumer. We don't consume. I believe we're citizens now. We are vocal, we are empowered, and so that's the way you need, you're not just doing a media buy or engaging with. You need to engage in a way that touches the head, the heart, things that are relevant to that citizen consumer. Now let's talk about a number of quick trends, the theme lines that came out of our research. If you'd like to go deeper, you can go to edelman.com, and there is a lot more information about this. Let's look at the first trend. We're calling it the bull markets, the bull purpose markets. This year, there was a radical difference around the globe. In the developing countries and the rapid growth economies, and that's where we had fun with the bull versus the bears, it is not surprising about these countries. Very vibrant economies, wind at the back, millions and millions, hundreds of millions of new consumers coming out of the rural economies, wanting to be in the middle class, wanting to have education, health, a good environment, a future for their children. We're fixing our sign right here. Okay, thanks. Got that, okay. Then you have, unfortunately, the older economies, The US and EMEA, we are not as purpose-oriented as the rapid growth economies. Let's see. Number one data point. If you only remember one data point from anything I talk about, this is it. Around the globe, citizen consumers said that business needs to place at least equal emphasis on societal interests as on business interests. And in Brazil, 91%. In China, 92%. Now, for those of you who are like, oh yeah, Carol, it's just research, we didn't ask if they bought something. We said, what is your expectation of business? This could have been 30%, 40%, 60%. Look at that. That is a bright, bright, shining light. Caution, caution, caution. Brands and businesses, take notice of this. In Brazil, everyone asks me about, well, what are the social issues? How do I pick a cause or social issue to engage with? I'll tell you a secret. I've been doing this work since 1982. I was 6 feet tall. Come on, you gotta laugh. I was 6, oh, thank you. Okay, you can always tell a pioneer. They have the arrows in their back. I got shorter, but no more. I'm at Edelman, where I've got lots of colleagues, 4,200 around the globe, and we are on a tear about this is so important to all of us and our globe. So don't pick an issue if you're advising your clients or your customers via a list. But in Brazil, we look at from 85% to 96%, all issues are important. What's authentic to your business, what's your core competency, what is the relevant to your core stakeholder, including your employee, then begin to get engaged in a highly deep and authentic way over time. So here's what we're learning about the rapid growth economies and the citizen consumer. They are expecting business to get engaged. They feel empowered. And you know what? I feel responsible. So empower me. Give me a means to get engaged. We all know that brands today, what do you want to do? You want a new narrative. You want a dialogue. You want people to talk about you. This is a way to do it. And here's what consumers, citizen consumers, will do. If they hear about what you're doing, and that's a great opportunity for all the media in the room, whether you're online or offline, or in store, or on pack, citizen consumers want to know about this. And when they do, they will buy, they will recommend, they will promote, they will invest in, they will work for. The numbers on the work for invest are 20 to 30% higher in Brazil. But if you're bad, they will protest. They'll be very vocal. So let's take a look at another theme. This is 5 years of good purpose research. We have declared two things. The last round, we said purpose is the 5th P of marketing. So you're all in marketing. What are the 4 Ps? Come on. We get it all: price, product, place, and promotion. Most of those today, unfortunately, because of radical transparency in social media, can be knocked off. Purpose, being the 5th P, has an impact when it's done right on culture. It becomes the lens of strategy of how an organization acts. So Avon, being the company that best understands women around the world, women health issues, breast cancer, and the prevention of violence against women. IBM, a smarter planet. Everything they do is against that lens. That is their purpose. Let's just take a look at some of the data that supports purpose as a 5th P, the re-engineering of brand marketing. First of all, it's okay to do well and do good over time. And look at the Brazilian numbers. They're strong over time, higher than the global numbers most of the years. We then asked the question, this blew me away. We said, what triggers you as a citizen consumer to buy a product? First, price and quality. Nobody ever bought anything because of a social issue. It's the second tier of influencers. Social issues are in the tier of advertising and engagement. We said, is it purpose, design and innovation, or brand loyalty? Now, as a brand marketer, I would have said, oh, design and innovation, brand loyalty. Guess what? Purpose trumped the other two over 5 years, rising again and again and again around the globe, and highly, highly, highly important in Brazil. Here's what happens when you do an authentic engagement. You do it that's relevant to your stakeholder. Over time, well communicated, really important, this is the result. You get the recommend, promote, and switching. And look at the numbers, Brazil against the globe. much, much higher. In Brazil, citizen consumers want brands and companies to be engaged with the core issues that are important in their lives. And here's what it looks like. From Itaú, and from Ambev, and from Natura, and from Vale. Programs that are engaged in culture, sport, health, the environment. There are social issues all around, and this is wonderful, deep programs, very well communicated. This is the third theme. The third theme is license to lead. What does that look like? Well, first of all, remember the 91%. So that's what citizen consumers want business to do. How is business doing? That's the blue one. Not very good. There's a huge gap. The gap spells opportunity. And what should companies be doing? In Brazil, radically different than from the US. In the US, it's donate a portion of profits, donate products. Not in Brazil. In Brazil, it's have employees engaged, provide educational information. Help me to understand about breast cancer, or about banking, or about the environment, how I can get engaged. Engage employees. That's another important area. Creating innovative and socially responsible new products and services. That's the other thing that purpose does for a company. It creates a lens to innovate. And then, here's the communication slide. That especially around the globe, but in Brazil, tell me about it. Don't be shy. Companies are just, oh, I don't want to promote this. You have, when you earn the results and the accolades, you are allowed and you are desired to communicate it. And what's one of the best ways? Social media. We know that. But don't forget, on-pack, in-store, and via employees. I know companies that have hundreds of thousands of employees. Engage them, arm them, let them tell your story. And who's meeting expectations? For the second year in a row, it's Natura. Then you have Petrobras, which we can discuss perhaps on our panel, Nestlé, Bradesco, and Banco do Brasil. So in closing, we have 5 years of learning from our Good Purpose research and our Edelman Trust barometer as well. Purpose is here to stay. Purpose has re-engineered brand marketing. It helps to trigger a purchase when it's done well. It can help you earn license to lead, and the largest growth markets, Brazil, China, India, the rapid growth economies. So I love to end with the CEO and Paul Pullman, and I certainly could also talk about, is it Paul Walsh at Diageo, has a similar comment. Brands need to earn trust because CEOs today, they earn a license to lead, not just making profits, but by their contributions to society. So purpose is powerful. Our panel now is going to talk about this and going deeper. I bring Natura back into the room because they were named #1. Natura does everything from its supply chain, its ingredients, how it deals with communities. I was there last week visiting them, going on a factory tour. It's how they relate to their employees. It's embedded totally into their culture and has put wind at their back to be an amazing organization in Brazil. And so when you have a core, strategic, aligned, and well-communicated purpose, it will help to grow your business, and you will have a very, very powerful narrative to answer the engaged, vocal, and demanding citizen consumer in Brazil. What is your purpose? So now I think we're going to have our panel discussion. Christina and my colleagues.
Good morning. I'm Christina Biazar, Managing Editor for the Wall Street Journal Americas. I would like to thank you, Marcos Baia, for inviting me to moderate this panel. It's very exciting. And I would like to welcome our panel and thank you for your time too. And I want to do this very informally, and I want to start straight away with questions. And please feel free to ask questions and raise your hand, and I'll give you an opportunity whenever you want. I'm Brazilian, so everything in Brazil is exaggerated right now. All the numbers are so high. And I have a question, actually, to start with Carol. And my question is that, is the Brazilian consumer also getting a little arrogant?
That's an interesting question. I've never been asked before. I don't know if I'd say arrogant. I would say demanding, perhaps. And I think that that's a fair demand. When I visit Sao Paulo and you tour and you see wonderful skyscrapers next to the favelas, and you see that there are millions of new consumers coming into the economy, I think that a demand, because of the transparency of media, is a fair thing to have. So I would say it is okay to expect brands and companies to do more.
I find that there is a little bit of a contradiction, because suddenly you see the Brazilians really feeling empowered in one side, but on the other hand, there's a great expectation from the Brazilian consumer that the government is going to intervene and make companies behave. I was working with your colleagues with the trust barometer research, and Brazil once again had very high numbers for expectations on from the consumers to have the government intervening and making companies behave. And there is a big complaint about lack of legislation. Is this a contradiction? Do they really believe that just by pulling out and refusing to buy a brand, you have more power than expected the government intervene?
Around the globe, citizen consumers do expect government to provide basic services. Education, water, sanitation, transportation, cities that work. But you also saw from our bull versus the bear markets that I feel more empowered as a citizen consumer, and that also people like me. While the numbers are lower for people like me, I still believe, especially with younger citizen consumers, and especially we see, and I've seen this over decades, that there's less selfishness and there's a greater understanding of the needs and the sharing of the needs. So I think that government, most smart companies don't want to be regulated. They would much rather earn a license to operate and a license to lead via being proactive versus being legislated.
Thank you. I would like to go to the other panelists now, and if you two can give us an overview, a quick overview on what your respective companies are doing based on what we just heard here from Carol, with this huge change in the consumer expectation.
Great.
Olga, please.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. What we're doing in Diageo, the starting point would be the global spectrum, and Diageo, particularly in recent years, has been extremely committed to all of this. For many years now, actually, since the creating of Diageo, the name comes from the combination of dia, which in Spain means day, and geo, which is the earth. So since the inception of the name, we've had a purpose, which is to celebrate life. And this purpose is very, very linked to what we do as a business as well. So that's where all of that, Carol was saying before, actually, that gives you a lens to innovate, that gives you a lens to participate, that gives you a lens to state how you communicate, how you work with your employees, and definitely that's very alive for us. After that, what we've done is in different regions, we're developing different programs. In Africa, for instance, one program we're very proud of is the Purity Water program we've got. We're impacting over 1 million people there. We're also creating closer to our business a beer in some parts of Africa where there's so much toxic alcohol that people actually die of consuming the wrong things. So we've created a very, very affordable but actually good to drink product, which means that people can access that instead of something that will harm them. In Latin America, we're very proud, and in the Caribbean, very proud of our Learning for Life program. What we've got is actually a system where, going back to the point of being close to your heart and to your business, we train young adults into retailing practice and also into bartending, so that then we help them get employed through our customers. And that's very alive in Miami. We're investing, probably next year we'll be investing over £2 million into that in the region. And that's really working very well. We've got over 12,000 people already trained up. And one of the things we're looking at doing in places like Brazil, where tourism is booming, there's a lot coming in terms of big events, is actually how do we team up with the government, with the tourist board, and actually all of the organizations driving that. So lots more to come for us.
I have a question for you before we go to Alexandre. The sector you are operating in is kind of love and hate relationship with everybody. I mean, Brazil, again, went on the very radical, I would say, very extreme way when imposing much more rigorous laws for the amount of drink you can have before you're driving, and how can you find a balance between being a good company, but also being blamed for so many deaths pretty much in Brazil with young people driving under the influence, and suddenly there was a radical transformation. Everybody is really very tight on how to behave, and it's a big transition phase going on in Brazil. And how did Diageo found the balance between those two aspects?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to mention that Diageo completely supports the zero alcohol before you drive, no matter where you are. So we're big supporters of that. And that's why we've set up we've got a system across the world. When we do brand activation, actually, we encourage people to take taxis or have a designated driver. So something that didn't exist in this region a few years ago, now is starting to be a common practice, which is people designate someone to drive when you're going out. The way that we deal with that is actually that we're very conscious that our product creates great celebrations for people, and actually very proud of that. At the same time, what we want to affect is how people feel, what are their attitudes towards using the product in a certain way. So, in the same way as you can be driving and texting and crash your car, nobody says that, phones are the creators of a lot of deaths when you're driving. So in the same way, what we do is we want to get people very conscious of the effect of what they're doing, and they're responsible. So for us, it's all about lifestyle choices. It's, you are an adult, you know how to behave, what you choose to do is your decision. You are accountable for your actions. And at the same time, make sure that we put together whatever campaigns are necessary to get people to very consciously understand that. So you're accountable, and we're going to let you know what you can do. And we'll provide you taxi services, designated driver campaigns.
Thank you. Let's hear from Facebook. Alejandro.
Thank you, Cristina. Good morning, everybody. I think the issue here is just fascinating. Just to start discussing on how consumers are changing their behavior and just paying more attention to what's happening now in the world. And this is absolutely aligned with what my company does, right? And it starts from the mission of our company, which is, Mark Zuckerberg believes that the world will be much better if people, are connected and if people are sharing things. And I think that, the best contribution that we can have, that we can give to this momentum is to really allow people to connect and share about different things. When I start thinking about everything that we do and how we empower users and we change the mentality of some of the companies, it's fascinating to see the evolution of that. And I think that Diageo here with Olga has one of the nicest cases that we have inside our platform. And this is really based on what we believe that's happening right now. So we try to work with those companies and these institutions to really make sure that they're using the technology to foster how people are behaving, because we believe that the behavior of the people didn't really change. What changed is the technology. People like to share and people like to connect since we were in the caves, right? It's part of the behavior of the humans. I think that what Facebook does and what we are trying to do here is to really create this platform that helps people to connect and share. And then just going a little deeper into what the company does, and not sure how many of you saw this initiative of Facebook allowing people to share that they are organ donators in their profiles. I think this is probably one of the nicest examples also how we can use the platform and the fact that we have 900 million people connected to start thinking about a good purpose. And just by the fact that we allowed people to say, I'm an organ donator, in few hours we had more than 100,000 people saying that they are organ donators. This is specifically for the US right now, but I think that has a huge and tremendous impact in the society. So that's pretty much what I think. I think that the fact that we can provide this technology to help companies and consumers to really change their behavior, I think that's one of the most important things in our contribution.
Thank you. If there are no questions, I keep going. If there are any questions, please just raise the. Oh,
One in the back.
I guess there is one there. Do you have a mic for the gentleman? Way back there.
Mike, he has to come. Oh, there she goes. Go, Guy.
Way back there. Please identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Javier Mantilla. So, I'm a U.S. citizen and Social Security number. Anyway, the question that I have really is looking at the way advertising is built out in Brazil specifically, that is an agency model where there's not a breakup of the media companies as it is in most parts of the world. If you keep the holistic idea of a campaign within the brand agency, and they're the ones that create all the extensions and the media, because that's very different than what we do in most other places of the world, do you think that's what accounts for a better overall grasp for consumers from the ideas and then the delivery of the social product with them?
Okay, I'll start. Well, I will say that model, and certainly my previous firm, Cone, was part of Omnicom, so we know that model. But there are vibrant public relations agencies in Brazil, and I believe that what's most important is the understanding about being authentic and finding the authentic purpose. There's a tremendous creativity once the social issue or the environmental issue is selected, and it needs to have, you know, it's kind of like a tree. It needs to have great roots, and then if those roots are really well fed, you'll have an amazing tree. But what's really, I put a lot of caution out there, is that the whole issue of pinkwashing and greenwashing, that to just try and make a large donation or sponsor an event but not make it sustained, you might get a little blip, but you're not going to get that true engagement and the affinity and the narrative and the allegiance with a brand. So, you know, I think that there are two types of agency models, you know, from the PR agency as well as the advertising. I think they both can go at it and support it, but authenticity has to be at the core. That's the most important thing.
I think Alexandre wants to add something.
Yeah, Javier, tudo bom? He's American, but he's like half Brazilian, half Cuban, Guatemala. So I think there's absolutely nothing to do with the agency model, right? I mean, the consumers are changing their behavior because we have now platform technology. That's what I call the tech disinhibition, right? I mean, people have a voice when they're on the platform where you have the real identity, and that's probably you know, one of the key changes and the transformation that we are seeing today with the social networks is because people now have like a real identity. You know, remember, you know, years ago we had an ICQ. An ICQ, you were a number, right? You were like 1, 3, 4, 5 at ICQ, and then you used to connect and talk to people as a number. Now you have a real identity. You know who you are. You know your interests. You know where you go. And that gives a lot of power to consumers to complain, to celebrate. And we have tons of different examples of things that happened in the last couple of years because this technology it's giving the power to the consumers. So I think there is absolutely nothing to do with the agency model. I think this is something that the companies need to look into, like independently of what's the model, because, you know, if we like or if we don't like, you know, whoever runs a company needs to understand that we don't control our brands, we don't control the message anymore. I think that Coca-Cola has something, and they say something very interesting. I mean, I think that the biggest challenge for the marketeers right now is how we change, how we shift this, like this mentality of the impressions to expressions, right? For many, many years, I mean, the one thing that we used to do was to really focus on what's my target? And, you know, how many people do I need to achieve, to reach? Right now, and that was impressions. Right now, we need to think about expressions. You know, how can I create content? How can I create something that makes my users, my consumers, to really share and be a brand advocate of my brand? So that's, I mean, that's the level that I think we should really think about, like, you know, independently of the model.
And do you think the companies are adjusting fast enough to this huge change that technology is bringing?
I think, yeah, well, fast enough is a very broad concept, right? I mean, I think that there are some companies that's yes, it's changing very rapidly, and you gave some examples or Carol gave some examples from Brazil, and I think that the example from Natura it's very interesting because they're really using the, you know, this massive natural resources that we have in Brazil, and they're doing a good job. I think, you know, it's not every company, and that's, you know, part of our job. And, you know, Tatiana, who is also here based in Miami, it's to really, you know, talk to those companies and explain how they can use this platform to really, you know, start putting this shift into these connections with the users.
I see Carol shaking her head a lot. So.
Oh, no, I'm not shaking my head, but I would say that when I talk about you have the permission to communicate as a brand in a company, it's really important to use 360 degrees and different types of communications. And I feel social media is so important because companies and their purpose, they usually don't have enough money for a full purchased media campaign. But I am also still believe in purchased media, and I also believe in video, whether it's short form, whether it's YouTube, or whether it's major spots. Because I think that there's a certain group, which is the senior executives of the company, that need to see their purpose in a major way so that other senior executives say that's a good thing. And do not underestimate that to truly have a purpose, it needs to be driven from the top, and then it needs to be authentic to the center of the organization and employees. But to get the resources, it's the C-suite who will say, I want advertising, research, brand marketing, R&D, HR, measurement, PR, community relations, and government relations to all come in the room. This is a secret sauce thing I'm sharing with you guys. This is when I was 6 feet tall. I'm now 5 feet tall, but I'll share it. Which is that bringing all of those resources into a room, they have assets. And then you create this incredible thing that is aligned with the business and the brand, and then you begin to distribute it out and engage.
Yeah, and just one very quick comment. I think that you are totally right, and I think that we need to use the different forms, and I'm not saying that we should not use, you know, the other medias. I just think that we need to think how we engage the users. You know, I used to say that the evolution of the communication in the advertising went from 180, 360 to 365. Right? We started with 180. I mean, it was a one way for many years. It was a one way, form of communication. And then, you know, the companies and the big brands used to do the advertising really to reach that, but there was no connection, there was no interaction. And then someone came with this beautiful thing of, oh, let's do it like 360, and let's try to engage in whatever, you know, moment of this new multifunctional, generation. Let's really make sure that we are connecting with them in the whole time. And what I believe it's the right thing right now is the 365. We need to be connected with these people 365 because, you know, this little thing here, you know, has more power than a computer that would not fit in this stage, you know, 40 years ago. And this, you know, the smartphones and the connections and everything is giving a lot of power to the users. So that's why I think it's so important to be 365. So 180 to 360 to 365.
Olga, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to add on your question about whether we're changing enough. I think for me, the way the change is going is actually what's important is that people are changing. So that means also, obviously, employees are people, therefore we're all changing. But more importantly, that's what's driving, I think, the authenticity piece, which is really important, is they want to find people who really connect, brands that really connect with who they want to be in this lifestyle. And therefore, they'll come and find you. So we need to shape to that. And it's, I think now, companies and brands understanding that more to be able to really create something that's authentic is what needs to drive us. So they will set the pace of change for us. That's what, for me, is interesting. It just feels like it's reversed.
Thank you. I think we have a question here.
Hello. I'm Alain Grunendahl from Gray, Latin America. And we all live in a world of a lot of financial pressures, obviously, quarterly numbers, getting to the results. And I think there's an inherent tension in a discussion between making our numbers, selling, not to pick on you guys, but selling more alcohol, and with these other societal pressures that we're also, or good citizenship. Same thing with Facebook, have this incredible platform to share information, but privacy concerns, and how do we use that information to sell marketing solutions? So I know longer term, we need to think, if we do short-term decisions that are bad, that's going to affect the business long-term, but what kind of incentives are created internally in the organization to make sure that we keep that balance and that we don't make short-term decisions that are going to be, have negative impacts on society as well?
For us, the first point is our values. So not necessarily going to incentives, which is a bit more sort of the carrot and stick approach. So starting with the values, we're very clear that authenticity, for instance, is one of our values internally, and it's actually one of our leadership capabilities. So that's really, really ingrained into the business, and that goes through from the way that you deal with your customers, you deal with your agencies, you deal with people around you. So I think when you start at that level, then suddenly it is a lot easier to be consistent with that way of thinking as you go through everything the organization does. And then internally, in terms of incentives, we're very clear. Everybody has, the set of objectives for the year, and we actually all have what we're calling a compliance and ethics element within those objectives. So anyone that's senior leadership up has to be responsible for making sure the team is actually within those parameters. And that includes everything from the way we trade, so how do you create your promotions, your pricing, etc. The way we do marketing, so we've got a very rigorous internal marketing code, which is actually sort of industry standard, and then also that the way we interact within the company as well. So it's very ingrained across all levels for us. Yeah.
So my answer in two parts. One, just thinking about technology, this is so new that it's very hard for us to think about short-term versus long-term, right? I think this is the iteration, like all the time, really understanding, how we can improve the platform. If you take a look in the biggest, technology companies, most of them are in constant beta. That's, they are always improving based on the feedback of the users. I think that the platforms right now, and I'm talking about all of the technology companies, it's easier for them to really improve based on the usage of those platforms. This is point one, and really focusing on the technology. When we think that the world right now, it's the world of choices, right? I mean, we live in a huge and massive, commodity, society. It's becoming really hard for you to create something that has like a tremendous differentiation. So I think that one of the reasons why the companies are focusing so much in all of the things that we're discussing here is that you need to grab the attention. You need to make sure that your users are keep using, that your company keep growing, and that really is related to the to how much responsible you are as a company, how much you preserve issues like privacy, like you mentioned. I think it's it's the hands of the consumers. I think it's our role right now to really think about how we can keep delivering things with responsibility. So I think that's it's a very interesting question. I think companies really need to keep, as we say in Portuguese in Brazil, we keep an eye on the cat and another one on the fish, right? So that you avoid that Yeah.
If I can answer that, I think that there's a number of ways, because everyone's under huge financial pressure. So if every company, if it's on the philanthropy side or various sponsorships, getting more focused on what you have, so doing less, bringing them together, finding some theme line that will fit in with a social purpose that will also tie into the business and the brand and the relevancy. So you can take what you have. Focus is your friend. That's another one of my 6 feet tall to the 5 foot tall, journey. Focus, so you've got something going now. But the other thing is that purpose is now becoming a huge lens and a driver of innovation in organizations for new products, for new processes, to make money. And a great B2B example will be GE and their eco-imagination purpose. And GE knew that they had to create new products and services in a carbon-constrained world. And so what was launched by Jeff Immelt was eco-imagination, but it wasn't a theme line, albeit they spent a lot of money on communicating it. It was a rallying cry for their engineers to recreate turbines and jet engines and desalination and locomotives, et cetera, because their customers need to have better performing, more greenhouse gas efficient products. They then have gone out and sold those and have made $20–30 billion of new sales based on these new, very deep purpose environment at the center. So you've got innovation, you've got focus, so there are ways to find, and then you've got, once you have this great narrative, you know, you can redirect promotional dollars. And then you involve your retailers and your supply chain and your employees. Employees also are another way. It's not additional money. It's actually adding miracle grow to them to engage them and take their energy and to have them as grassroots ambassadors and champions.
Oh, I just wanted to add something, as I was thinking a bit deeper about your questions, and as Carol and Alexandra were sharing. And I think, you know, as much as we've got a lot of that going on, but I wanted to share some of the dilemmas that we're also facing, you know, because it felt like I just gave you an answer like it's all clear and really is it's sorted. And it really isn't. This is something that keeps coming up. And I think when you put this idea of purpose and sustainability in the mix of the long and the short term, then you can go, oh my God, then now this is really all very confusing. And maybe the opportunity is that you just have to rethink the short and the long term, like things that maybe don't exist as separate. And you will always have peaks and troughs, and you'll have periods where you're really struggling or not. But the long term is your purpose, and that never changes. And then what might be the adjustments you need to do in the short term to get somewhere? So that's where the balance is really tricky, but I think that's where the end result will always keep going, is where you are very clear that your purpose is the thing that doesn't change and keeps you going. And then you will have economic instability or, you know, financial pressure for a while, and that might mean you have to cut back on some things. So there's something around, in my head, is as if you were changing from I'm doing something because it's the right thing to do, to doing it because it's what you do, because it's who you are. And therefore, then that feeds the short term as well. And that will tell you what you do and what you don't do. So that's, I think, you know, in my head, a bit the journey sort of we're going through.
Thank you. Before I pass to you, I will make a quick question here. I would like to revisit this little ranking that Carol showed us about the companies with best recognition in Brazil in particular. And we are saying Natura, Petrobras, Nestlé, Bradesco, and Banco do Brasil. And this, for me, is very intriguing. I mean, I can see Natura, because Natura was born as a company that years ago was emphasizing the environment and all that. Petrobras couldn't be in a sector more seen as the devil, as well as banking. Everybody hates banks right now, and suddenly you see two of Brazilia's biggest banks in the ranking. So can you tell us what's going on here?
Sure. And you're right. Financial services as an industry is the least trusted industry around the globe. No surprise. I think part of it's Brazilian pride. I think part of it is sponsorship. I think that I know that in Brazil, actually, there are tax benefits to support cultural, social, and environmental activities. Interesting. That doesn't happen that much in the US. So I think that there is, I don't think the citizen consumer knows the difference at times. And so I think that the massive amount of banners and sponsorship begins to blur, and I think that that's influencing some of this.
In sports, you mean?
In sports, but also culture, because Petrobras does a lot in culture.
Oh, okay. And how Nestlé gets into this picture?
Nestle is one of, I believe, one of the most socially engaged companies in terms of from their supply chain and how they operate. And they have all sorts of programs that are, whether they're good for society or supplier-based or they're consumer engaged. And I think that's why it came up.
That's interesting. Anybody from those companies here?
No? Oh, no.
Oh, okay. So hold on then, because I have a question waiting here. And I come back to you. Can you raise your hand here? Sorry.
Oh.
Thank you. My name is Juan Carlos Santamaria with Kaltura, and the citizen consumer is rapidly becoming the citizen journalist
Yes.
with the the ability to have a high quality, high definition camera on your cell phone. How do you see companies engaging with that citizen journalist to enable brand awareness and building brand loyalty?
It's a great question. I think that that's why the public relations model, which has always been about engaging in an influence versus talking at, is becoming a lot more important today. I think that, as we've discussed here, unfortunately, companies don't control their brands and their reputations anymore. And so it's how you behave. And so the engaging of, I think you start with the employee. I think that that is the least understood of any audience. I think that the companies that we've worked with, and I've worked with them over decades, it's been, oh, let's have a day of service, or let's have an employee newsletter. That's not the case anymore. I mean, IBM, for example, has 440,000 employees around the globe. They engage them in Smarter Planet in all sorts of ways. They have a service corps where their highest performing employees are chosen and they're sent to emerging countries to really learn to provide their services as well as to understand cultures. I think it's the answer in a short form. Sorry, I'm not that short. I am short physically. It's about authentic engagement.
Thank you, Alexander.
Yeah, let me just, I think this is probably one of the biggest dilemmas that the companies live today, right? Should I open my page on Facebook? Should I let users, make comments about my company, my brand, whatever? And I don't think it's an easy answer because, when you decide to go and have this like long-term relationship, this is not a marriage that you're not sure if this is going to work or not, right? I mean, you cannot just open and say, listen, come on, and say whatever you want, and then like at some point, oh no, it's too tough, like I can't answer that anymore. So I think that this dilemma, I think that tends to to mitigate as companies become more mature in terms of making these relationships with the consumers. But I think it's still a big challenge. There are some companies that decided not to open and not to have this open relationship with consumers, and they had massive problems. There is this like very famous case in Brazil where it's a clothing company that launched this new line of fox fur hats and jackets and everything, and like after a week, a group of 500,000 people were saying that they were killing fox and rabbits just to make the clothing. And they had to, and they were absolutely closed, but they decided after like 2 weeks and protests in front of the stores and everything, they decided to just shut down this line and not sell anything. On the other hand, you have companies like AT&T in the United States who did a very interesting job in getting the complaints from the users and transforming these into almost like a Wikipedia for AT&T, helping users, right? Instead of you calling a 1-800 number and say, oh, my phone is not working, they just created this massive application where users help other users. So, I mean, I think it's an interesting dilemma. I think that, that you guys as marketeers, you need to understand, if you're ready to do it, but I think at some point, I think it's important for you to think about, and it doesn't need to be only on Facebook, right? Comcast did an amazing job with Twitter as well. So I think it's really like a matter of thinking and understanding what's the objective and if you're ready or not.
Thank you, Alexandre. I think we have time for one more question. Yes. Back there.
Marcelo Pacheco from, ESPN Brazil. Carol, do you have any data showing, because there's a fever in Brazil of companies trying to be perceived as a social responsible, and they are not. Do you have any data showing the damage in the brand if you try to be perceived as a social responsible and you are not?
Well, some of the data, I think that that we showed about promote and punish, we have other deeper data, obviously, data cuts that we can do. But the punish is one that, the numbers keep going up with the transparency afforded by social media. So I think it's, the winds are clear. Companies must behave. It's about behavior. I mean, that's why when Olga talked about values, it's about companies, how they behave, because you cannot control 10,000, 100,000 employees, and you can't control your citizen consumers.
Anybody? Olga? Alexander?
I think for me, at least, I guess no data to provide you with, but I think from my perspective, it is very clear that given how easy it is for people to communicate about disappointment, and how normally you get two types of feedback, people who are really happy, people who are really unhappy. So when people are really unhappy about something, they want to make sure everybody they know knows. So there is no doubt in my mind, and we've seen, you know, with some of the activations we've done, recently we had a problem in Scotland, in Diageo. The minute you do something that is not well perceived, it actually affects the company globally. So there was an issue with an award ceremony actually on a pub in Scotland, which is something that you'd go, I mean, never in your life you would have thought that would have got across the globe within 24 hours. And it became for us actually a huge press crisis and a media crisis overall. So having to manage that also for us real time and live is also another issue, because not an issue, it's something we have to deal with because now we are exposed globally all the time, 365, 24 hours a day. So definitely there is no doubt in my mind, because immediately when you get a press release talking about something people didn't like, then the brands all come up, one, Diageo, The Maker, Salt, Johnny Walker, Baileys. So it's pretty immediate. Yeah.
Alicia?
I think, Marcel, I think it's really dangerous, right? I mean, you have to be a very, very good company to do something different from what you say nowadays. I mean, it's very hard for you to, you know, hide in a world that is absolutely connected as, you know, citizen journalists, that people that can create and, you know, take pictures, and in questions of seconds, you know, like 900 million, you know, in the world will, you know, will see that. So I think it's, you know, it might have companies, you know, in that situation, but I think it's risky. You know? Right nowadays, it's risky because, you know, users have the power to really communicate and see what's happening.
Thank you, Alicia.
Can I make one?
Yes.
I just want to give a quick story about when a company does this right. And is anybody from McDonald's in the room? Okay. During the LA riots in the early 90s, when horrible days of riots and everything in the community in South Central LA being torched, and I mean, it's horrible. There were 22 McDonald's in the riot area. And so you'd have on four corners, you'd have McDonald's and Church's Fried Chicken and something else. Not one McDonald's was touched. Not one in the riot area. And everything else was up in flames. And McDonald's, whether you know, they sell interesting food, and it's salt, and it's high fat, and this and that. But from the very beginning, Ray Kroc, when he started that company, he believed when you took a hard-earned dollar out of the market, you gave something back. And that inoculated that company during the worst thing that could ever happen. And I always tell that story, even though it may be about 20 years old now, because it shows the power of purpose at the core that's authentic.
Thank you, very interesting. I think we're running out of time. Someone is looking at me. Thank you very much. I appreciate your collaboration. And thank you.
Thank you.